morning, everybody. Welcome into the sanctuary. Here we are, the last Sunday of November already, and we are feeling good. We have just gathered together, we have celebrated, we have been grateful and thankful, and we know how very and truly blessed we are. And so we're moving ahead now out of one cycle into another. Life works in cycles. We are always cycling, believe it or not, because nature requires us to do so. Nature is in a cycling process. It goes from one changing season into another changing season into another changing season. So we're just leaving now the season of harvest. We've gathered the harvest, we've celebrated the harvest, we've given thanks for the harvest, and we're grateful. And now we face the next season, which is the winter season. And we know that as we do, we have an opportunity to contemplate, to meditate, to be mindful, to gather our wits about ourselves, and to look a bit more closely and a bit more fully into the interior side of our lives and ask ourselves how we're doing, where are we, what's going on. And it's interesting that this should happen at the very busiest time of year for so many, the Christmas season. And so, my dear ones, we acknowledge that as we look out all over the world in our own wonderful spiritual family, we're looking at the aspect of life as ongoing, continuous and eternal. The cycles will always keep going and going and going no matter what. We're all the time moving and changing, morphing into something more than we were before with each season, whether we recognize it or not. And so that's what we're looking at. Now, we have taken that topic and subject and we've looked at it very closely on our Remembrance Sunday. And so we know that life is ongoing and it never ceases to be. And sometimes that very thought is kind of wears me out at the idea of it forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And that's only because I'm associating it with life on planet Earth. That's always a rush, it seems. Because like Father Murphy, sometimes anytime you asked him how he was doing, he'd say, sure, I'm rushing. He was always rushing somewhere or another. And so I often wonder, where are we rushing to? What's all the rushing about? Anyway. So we are asked to look at that in the context of where we are right here and right now. And so it's to do with the cycles, it's to do with coming and going. It has to do with preparing, and it has to do with arriving. And so this thing called transition, which we look at closely, very closely from time to time, but indeed it's good to look at it all of the time, and then it doesn't bother us when the moment comes, is simply the necessary step for you and for me to graduate into our most wonderful expanded experience of life continuing, that's all. Now, as far as I know, there's no other way to do it. It has to be this thing called transitioning, and we have to go through that portal, either hissing and kicking and screaming, or the other end of that pole peacefully and so on. But it's for you and for me to understand it's just a cycle, and it doesn't matter when that moment comes. Rarely do we feel I've done everything I want to do, because there's always a task list, isn't there, on this plane? There's something more on the sheet, there's something more on the sheet, there's something more on the sheet. And so until that stops. And I had a beautiful conversation with one of our members, an older member who hasn't been here for a while, but she's been going through her own challenges for quite some time, for many years. And so a mutual friend of hers who's a member here was telling me about this wonderful lady, and that she was ready to make her transition. And my friend was upset, but so anyway, she called me from the home of her friend, and I didn't know she was with her. And she said, okay, here's the thing. Marion would like you to take care of the ceremonies and so on and so forth, and do her memorial service for her and so on. I said, oh, okay, all right already. And I said, well, would she like to talk to me? I mean, really, I haven't talked to her for a long time. And she said, well, she's here now. I said, well, if she wants to talk to me, would you put her on? So she put her on. Hi, Marion. Hi, how are you? Just getting my ducks in a row, lining things up, getting things sorted out. And I would love if you would be able to do the service for me. I said, of course. And then we had this conversation. It's like we were just talking about, what we're going to eat for the next meal kind of thing. It was that casual. It was just that casual. And I said, oh, so you're in for a great adventure, I hear. She said, yeah. I said, oh my goodness me, your moment has come when you really will shine. This is when you really get to shine in this moment now, because you're off to such a big, wonderful, and amazing, amazing experience. And I said, are you concerned about it at all? Are you worried about it? Are you troubled about it? She said, no, not really, not really. I said, well, it's going to be a huge party when you get over on the other side, and you're going to have great, welcoming committee and blah, blah. And we chatted like this, like she was getting ready to go to a ball or something, and she was going to be the Cinderella arriving as the princess. And it was a wonderful conversation. And so at the end of it, I did say, are you scared? Are you worried? Are you afraid? She says, no, not at all. Not really, no. And I said, well, do you think you're ready for this? She said, I know I will be in the moment. I know I will be in the moment, very casually. And she gave me such a gift, I can't tell you. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful thing. And so the whole idea of life and its cycles and so on is to not take one moment of it for granted, but to be in the cycle, be in the season, go with the flow of the season, whatever the season is. And you and I get to go from the harvest and the feasting and the Thanksgiving and all of that into what millions of people are going into now, called the Advent season. This is a Christian season, and millions of people are going into it. Now, the beautiful thing about the fathers, the early fathers of the church, where they were fantastic psychologists. When people couldn't get their minds around change, all those pagan people a long time ago, when they couldn't get their arms and minds around, Christian feast, the church decided, let's Christianize all the pagan feasts that they don't want to move up and out of. And so that's what they did with the winter solstice feasting and so on, and which is a festival of light. Because our ancient ones, way back before Christianity, indeed any kind of organized religion that we know of, way before that, our ancestors would celebrate this season with great festivals of light and so on. Because having gleaned the harvest and so on and so forth, and being grateful for that, they had to face the long, long, dark winter nights without electricity. And so they became very ponderous, very mindful, very tuned in. There wasn't much they could do, so they had time on their hands. So they used that time for contemplation, and they used that time to connect with their gods. They used that time to get more intimate with their gods. And by the time the winter solstice came around, they were ready to celebrate the light, which meant that after the solstice, the days would grow longer, the nights would grow shorter, and they knew spring was on the way, which was their looking forward to the next sowing of the seeds of the next harvest. And so all the joy that conjured up within them gave them the opportunity to overcome all the challenges of the deepest, darkest winter and to enter into celebration, camaraderie, and as a community gather together, have a spiritual experience as they lauded and applauded their gods. And so it was a very smart thing for the powers that be to Christianize this lovely time, this Advent time, when it was all thrust and focused on preparation for the arrival of the light. And so way back when, one of the popes decided it should have been a 7-year. In the beginning, it was a 7-week preparation. It was kind of like Lent, longer, but Lent. And it was a time to repose, pause, and repent. Now, repent in the good sense, to take a look at what was working in your life and decide, are you going to keep on doing what's not working in your life? Or are you going to ponder what works in your life and then put your focus on that? And so these days were entered into with an open receptivity and a readiness to hear on the inner side whatever the inner side had to convey to us with regard to priorities and so on and so forth. And so I never fail to avail of this particular season. I love it. And tell you, the two things that I miss most from my convent life were the retreat times. We had a week's retreat at the end of the year. We had a week's retreat in the mid-year. Beautiful time when you draw aside, you were quiet, you had time to yourself, you had a minute for yourself to contemplate and so on and see where you were. It's beautiful. Nothing like quietude and silence to really allow that sap of the soul to rise and to allow us a portal through which we can pass into intimacy with our source. And that's what I see Advent as. The busier it gets, the more needed in my life it is required for me to give myself that Advent time. Advent simply means coming. And so throughout the Advent ceremonies and so on, there's this deep sense of longing, this deep sense of waiting, this deep sense of preparing. Maranatha is the cry. Come, come. Come, Christ with your light. Come, Christ, with your light, and fill us with your illumination. That's the whole idea behind the Advent time of preparation. So that when we get to the winter solstice, when we get to the celebration of light, the Christ light amongst us, we've prepared, we are open, we are receptive, and we're ready to be flooded and illuminated by that wonderful, wonderful thing that happens. It's awesome. If I think of Newgrange in Ireland now, the winter solstice, and some of us have been there who visited Ireland on our last trip, there's this deep, dark cavern that takes you into a very ancient, hollowed space underground, and just as you enter, very narrow, sometimes you have to go sideways as you're going up, but just as you enter the door that you bend down to go through, there's just a box, a window box there. And on the winter solstice at dawn, the light seeps through the box and it flows down the aisle like a river of gold. A river of gold. It flows all the way down and then it totally illuminates the chamber inside. The darkness inside disappears and it's totally illuminated by the sunlight. And it would appear to be a miracle how the people get that right way back when, with their precision and geometry and all that stuff. Anyway, that's the way it is. It's that kind of feeling. We're preparing the inner chamber for this light to come in and illuminate it and flood it. That's what Advent's all about. But it gives you and me a chance to get in touch with the deep, deep longing that is within us all, covered more deeply in some rather than others, at the surface of others, buried in some. And so we get in touch with that sense of longing and yearning, and it's what Augustine put his finger on when he said, "You have made us for yourself, O God, and our hearts cannot find rest until they rest in you." And so the longing is there, the longing is there, the longing is there. And linked with longing is a sense of belonging. We're yearning for, we're longing for a sense of true belonging, because sometimes all of us have experienced feeling estranged from everything and everyone. We have felt this sense of isolation and separation, and there was no good reason for it. No real good reason that you could put your finger on, but it was just there. And all it is, it's the soul endeavoring to awaken us to what we have once known, or what the song says, to get back to where we once belonged. I'm telling you, it's there, whether it's covered or not. And every now and again, a wave of yearning will come up through us, and we won't even know why until we remember. You have made us for yourself, O God, and my heart cannot rest until it rests in you. So that's what the Advent weeks offer us the opportunity to do, to not be afraid of the longing, to get in touch with that longing, so that we can know that we really and truly do belong. We really and truly do belong. But I have to say, in our polarized societies today, it's getting harder and harder and harder to have that sense of belonging, that sense of being seen, and that sense of being heard, that sense of knowing I'm here and I'm seen. I'm here and I'm recognized. Because technology, believe it or not, as wonderful and as more advanced as it becomes, the more separation and isolation there is an opportunity for, because we don't gather anymore. We're losing our ability to storytell. There are no more great storytellers amongst us. The storytellers in our families are disappearing. I can remember gathering around 200 years ago in Ireland, the kitchen table, and listening to my aunts and listening to my uncles and listening to my mother and listening to my father tell of the stories of their youth and their parents' youth and so on, and picking up a sense of the history and so on, and the sense of belonging, that you belong to something more than just a unit. You belong to something bigger and greater than that. But we as spiritual beings need to gather together and tell our stories and hear stories and understand that we belong. We belong to each other. All of us belong to each other. Like it or not, we belong to each other. I'll never tire of telling us all that, telling myself that we belong to each other. And so if anybody is feeling separated, isolated, detached, disconnected, the rest of us ought to be seeing that, recognizing that, and making sure that that person or people or group understand and know that, yes, I know you belong, and you belong wherever I am. You belong wherever I am. Wherever I am, you belong. You can feel you belong wherever I am. And that's the challenge of Advent as we go through these days of very, very great busyness. You know, Christmas tide is the Advent tide, and Christmas tide lulls and it soothes. But the Christmas season agitates, stirs up, rouses. That's the secular season. It gets us into freneticism sometimes. Oh, what am I going to do? And what am I going to do? And the list isn't filled. And oh my God, and I forgot that, and I forgot him. And oh, what am I going to get for her mom? And I'm just not ready. I'm just not ready. Ready for what? To give out pretty packages that you've done your best and hope that the people who are getting them will like them at least, far less use them. I don't know anymore. I don't know anymore what it's all about, Alfie, that part of it all. But I do know this, that this is your opportunity and this is my opportunity to give the greatest of all gifts, kindness, mindfulness, awareness. And I'm calling upon us all now, especially as we're out there, to pay very close attention to being grateful to all the wait staff out there, all the sales assistants out there who have to take on the extra challenges of this season, and for us to recognize them and be grateful to them and be thankful and not treat them like they're servants, not that anyone in this room would. But I've seen it in restaurants. I've seen it. And I'm no judgment on the person that clicks their fingers. I have no judgment. I just think unskilled. As Thich Nhat Hanh would say, spiritually unskilled. Spiritually unskilled, that's all, no judgment. Just in the process of waking up, just in the process of becoming mindful, like I've had to do so many times, like we all get to do. So to have that kind of patience and to understand that the greatest of all gifts that you and I can give is one of recognition, recognition, recognition. allowing somebody to know that yes, they are seen, yes, they are heard, and yes, they do belong. It might be just a smile. It might be just a touch. It might be just the opening of a door for somebody. It's our time now to shine. It's our time to truly shine when everybody else is bumping in and rushing and poking and pushing and all of that jazz. It's our time now to be what we're called to be. We're on the front edge. And as I said this morning, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. Oh, absolutely there is a Santa Claus. Never, never think there's not. But guess what? The Santa Claus is you. You are the Santa Claus. Or whatever you want to call that energy of giving, that energy of care, that energy of concern, that energy of kindness, that energy that always says yes, that energy that always shows up and makes a difference and puts a smile on a face and puts maybe a hop, skip, and jump in somebody's step. You could be the one that somebody's waiting for every day of your life. There's someone life in your existence and in your purview that could be changed just because you smiled, just because you noticed, just because you recognized, just because you did a kindness, just because you gave somebody a sense that they were seen, that they were recognized, that they were heard, and that they belonged. That's for me and for you the season to do and to be and to show up as. What a great good thing this Advent time is. I love it. So we're going to go out there like spiritual ninjas, and we're going to take on the task of staying awake, staying mindful, being present, because we're the ones. There's no one else to do it and be it. There's no one else to wake up. We're the ones that's asked to wake up and be all that we can be in spite of our own challenges. And God knows we all have challenges. But to move up and beyond those and know I'm more than that. And I'm going to allow the moreness that is in me, the givingness that is in me, life's givingness back onto itself that wants to move through me to be present this coming month of December. So that someone somewhere along the line will reach a Christmas time when they feel better than they started out into the month. And we're here because we're equal to this. We're here because we're able for this. We're here because the soul in us is urging us to be all that we can be right now. There's a great good world out there because once you remember the movie, Build It and They Will Come? Build It and They was a great movie. I loved it. Well, build the consciousness of it and it will come through you. It will come through you. There's no other way for this world to change and become better than to happen through you and through me. God help us all. But it's possible. It goes to show you that if I'm the one that's called, if you're the one that's called to be the Santa Claus, to be the goodliness, the kindliness, the Saint Christopher of old, then miracles do happen and everything is possible. Because sometimes when we look at our own lives and it's in a heap, we say, yeah, I don't think so. But yes, so. Yes, so. You are the very, very one exactly as you are, whatever state you're in, you are the very one that's called. You're in this room today, and that's why you're the ones. Because we are called to come up higher into that awareness of the truth of our being, which is awesome, which is amazing, which is magnificent. And don't ever, ever identify yourself with your circumstances and your conditions. You are not those things. You are so much more than that. Now, know yourself as your Creator knows you, and let me tell you, soon you will be walking on water. And when you do, you'll decide to take the boat, and that's the truth, and so it is.